Shalom, Shalom, and welcome. Welcome to the channel. If you're tuning in for the first time, my name is Symmanayah, and these are the words I'm compelled to present to those who seek to do the will of the Almighty Father, to those who will discover that Yahuah, the Almighty One, manifests His word in the name of Yahusha, and He directs us to His word to learn, to improve in growing in a set-apart life that He has laid out for us. In this segment of the series, Seed to Harvest, if this is your first time tuning into one of those, I want you to understand, Seed to Harvest is a series of messages that run parallel as it relates from conception to birth and beyond, naturally and spiritually. There's a parallel. There's some things we can learn. You see, the way the Almighty Father laid out this plan of life, this journey, there's so much we have taken for granted. And if we begin to pay attention to the wisdom, the opportunity to learn certain habits that makes for better relationships, naturally and spiritually, we will discover so much. I want to take you through this segment as I talk about irritating moisture. Irritating moisture. Now, some of you might say, what is this about? Some might be curious. Some might press on. And others may take the time to listen. My brothers and sisters, discover the similarities an infant goes through as it relates to being born again. The similarities an infant goes through as it relates to being born again. He's like, what? Stay with me, and I'll make every attempt to connect the words in this message. Wisdom requires us not to take any component to teaching for granted. In other words, the teachings that the Almighty Father put before us, He doesn't want us to take it for granted. And when we look at what can be learned from the simplest of things, we position ourselves to receive greater. With civil unrest, chaos, wars, famine, with all the things that we are facing right now, movement will be another one. So, look to learn all that you can, and we just might discover the voice of the Spirit of Yahusha, and that He's put us in positions to learn. Many infants go through some type of irritating moisture. When their diapers are not changed, severe irritating moistures can lead to diaper rash, or even worse. Okay, before you dismiss this message, I will share with you why the things we can learn with dealing with a child to prevent that diaper rash, to prevent them from dealing with irritating moisture. We can learn something as it applies to our lives today, no matter what age you are. I will present the comparisons to what we learn with babies and how it can provide lessons for dealing with those born again spiritually. They face irritating moisture. And I'll make that point. Stay with me. Too much water to an infant will lead to frequent urination. In contrast, pushing too many scriptures to a newborn spiritually can lead them to face irritating situations. Look around, my brothers and sisters. Many are beginning to wake up and discover their position in this set-apart family, or at the very least, they are on that path to grow in maturity. If we take time to ask them questions, and if we bombard them with too many scriptures, my brothers and sisters, it will present something similar to irritating moisture. You see, irritating moisture for a baby is they've wet that diaper to the point where it's loaded and it needs to be changed. They need a fresh diaper. Now you say, well, how did you get that from? What were you talking about, Symmanayah? This is what I'm saying, my brothers and sisters. In relationship, father, mother, a guardian, a caretaker of an infant, the things that we learn, the simplest of things we learn to be sensitive to that child. I believe we should also be sensitive to one that is waking, coming into the awakening, recognizing that the Almighty Father has drawn them and has a place for them. And if we saturate one with too many scriptures, they may become overwhelmed. Whether I say overwhelmed or irritated. You ever seen someone chased away from the truth because too many people was throwing too many scriptures at them and they could not digest it? They was not ready for some of the things that has been pushed on them. You see, if we learn these lessons as it relates to the child, and we see that as a set apart one of Yahuah, we face being born again spiritually. Then those who have experienced managing irritating moisture will learn how to manage giving words of wisdom to a brother or sister that is born again spiritually. Mothers also experience irritating moistures with regards to producing and managing breast milk. You might say, what? You're off to be, stay with me, Yahusha. My point is, we must learn to understand what we face on an ongoing basis. We must learn to be understanding to the challenges both mothers and newborns, the challenges that they face, my brothers and sisters. You see, when we pay attention to these things, it makes for a stronger relationship. This can also be applied to spiritual milk before being able to take solid foods. Visit Hebrews 5:13. It lets you know that those who are in need of milk are inexperienced. Wouldn't you say that's the case for a newborn? Naturally or spiritually? The scriptures make comparisons to the Almighty Yahuah's word as water, thus irritating moisture if you're getting too much water. Know this, the scriptures also uses examples of us identifying with a tree. In other words, he used scenarios of a tree. And if you're familiar with a tree, if it gets too much water, it can be overwhelming. There are plants, if you overwater them, they will die. They will wither. They will be stressed. Stay with me, my brothers and sisters. Again, my point is the simplest things in our lives, if we learn how they relate to growing in a set-apart life, it will lighten the burden. It will take some of the weights off, my brothers and sisters. My goal is to prove that we can learn lessons by recognizing similar responsibilities exist from birth to the grave. We have taken much for granted, my brothers and sisters, and as a result, we have missed out on wisdom that was staring us right in the face, my brothers and sisters. It is important to begin to see the need to discern the voice of Abba Yahuah. And we can do that as we learn his desires, his ways, and the things that he put before us that will help us to learn. It is important to begin to see the need to discern the voice of Yahuah. When we recognize his voice, my brothers and sisters, his presence, we will see his teachings have been with us for many years. We just taken too many things for granted. And you will hear me talk about that. Why? As end times get intense, the scriptures talk about the least among us. I will present some scriptures in a moment, my brothers and sisters. Bear with me. It's not all a rant. I want you to have a conversation with mothers. Talk about irritating moisture. Talk about how she manages the children or the child's diaper to try to prevent diaper rash, to try to prevent the child from being irritated by a soiled diaper. Have a discussion with the mothers as it relates to breast milk. There are some mothers that will breastfeed and face the challenges of trying to put pads to cover their breasts to prevent wet spots in public if they are nursing mothers. There are some mothers who are new to this and are facing some form of shock. In some cases, it may even contribute to depression because this is new for the mother. So we as adults, if we begin to recognize and not take for granted what can be learned from the mother managing the diaper of a baby, to the mother managing the moisture from her breast if she's breastfeeding upon birth of a newborn baby. I believe if you have discussions with mothers, it will show that you care. It will show that you're sensitive, and maybe even you may not stray away or run away, but you can be, you as the father or as a man, can be a support to that mother, to that baby, to that infant. Have the discussion. You might be surprised that the woman may be pleasantly surprised that you even want to talk about it. Don't take it for granted. I believe those who patiently pay attention to this message will discover nuggets of wisdom. I also believe those who take for granted the simple of things often think more highly of themselves. Let's pivot to the following. Come with me to the 12th chapter of Romans, verse 3. Romans 12:3 says this: "For I say through the favor which has been given to me, to everyone who is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he should think, but to think soberly, as the Almighty One has given to each a measure of belief." It says here Elohim in the scripture version 2009, but I prefer when I see that to say the Almighty One, for there is only one Almighty One. He is Yahuah. The scriptures mention individuals being led astray in the last days. I present directions for recognizing the realities of end times and what will be done. Paying close attention to those who are least among us will be needed to fulfill the final Exodus and more. Let us ask the questions. How will people be led astray? I would say one of the answers is distracted. Can disregarding the condition of a person cause disruption? A baby with a diaper rash? A mother overwhelmed with breast milk? Someone coming into the wake and bombarded with so many scriptures, they cannot discern how to digest what's being presented to them one by one. These things can be a distraction, a disruption. When we learn to be more attentive, we will discover the discipline for pressing forward more readily. The quicker we can respond to needs, the faster we will be able to press forward as migrations begin to ramp up. For they will surely come, O Yahusha. Look around. People are moving around now. People are being displaced now. I want to present some scriptures dealing with water, since this title is Irritating Moisture. It says, husband, love your wives as Messiah did love the assembly and gave himself for us, in order to set it apart and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word. You see, it's using water in the word of the Almighty Father synonymous. There's a similarity. In order to present himself a splendid assembly, not having spot or wrinkle, or any of this sort, but that it might be set apart and blameless. That was Ephesians 5:25 through 27, where I make the comparison of the word of Yahuah is like water. Again, I will challenge you to look around, and you will see that there are those, if you give them too many scriptures, too much scriptures, too fast, it's like shoving meat at a newborn spiritually. They need the milk. They need to learn the literal, the spiritual, gradually. You see, we're in a time when people want things fast, where things are cut short, and sometimes we don't sensitize ourselves to what should be done, why, and how it can make such a beautiful difference when we pay attention. Consider John 4:13 and 14, my brothers and sisters. John 4:13 and 14 says, Yahusha answered and said to her, everyone drinking of this water shall thirst again. This is John 14:13 and 14. He said, but whoever drinks of the water I give him shall certainly never thirst. And the water that I give him shall become in him a fountain of water, springing up into everlasting life. Do you know, when we look at the smallest, the simplest of things, when we pay more attention to the details, it becomes embedded in us. We can begin to experience how swift so much that has been given to us, how quickly we can digest it, learn how it makes us a better person, if we are mindful of the steps that the Almighty Father has laid out. Many fail to realize the Bible or the scriptures we have presently, they're not the original inspired words of the Almighty Yahuah. You see, the original scriptures were the inspired word from the Almighty. Abba Yahuah knew what would occur and made sure we would learn the difference between what is seen versus what is not seen. In other words, my brothers and sisters, we will learn the life in the scriptures. If not already, we are learning the life in the scriptures. You see, when we first read, there's the literal. And that everlasting life that Yahusha mentioned in the 4th chapter of John, meaning there's always something to learn, something to get, even in such matters as it relates to irritating moisture. Come with me to Hebrews 11:1. It says, and belief is the substance of what is expected, the proof of what is not seen. It says a lot, my brothers and sisters. Drop down to Hebrews 11:6 and say, but without belief it's impossible to please him. For he who comes to the Almighty One has to believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who earnestly seek him. You might say, well, what does this have to do with anything? It's about being attentive to the needs of the children, the babies, to the needs of the nursing mother, even to the newborn's dad. That father might not know how to handle these situations. You see, my brothers and sisters, these things should not be taken for granted, because sometimes arguments, fights, depression, anger, emotions are challenged when we neglect the things that contribute towards life. A newborn baby contributes towards life. One born spiritually will contribute to the building up of the set-apart nation of Yahusha. This requires discerning. Discerning is when the Spirit of Yahusha shows. The Spirit of Yahuah that comes in Yahusha's name reveals and makes known to us. And oftentimes, we will learn to believe what is not seen and act in a way to make a difference in managing the challenges that we face. Come with me to 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 4 through 6. For it reads, "In such trust we have towards the Almighty One through the Messiah. Not that we are competent in ourselves to reckon any matter as from ourselves, but our competence is from the Almighty One, who also made us competent as servants of a renewed covenant, not of the letter, but of the Spirit. For the letter kills, but the Spirit gives life." You see, my brothers and sisters, the letter, the written word, has been tampered with. There are many translations of the scriptures or the Bible. Some insert a different name for the Messiah, for Yahuwah's word, even for Yahuah. Some confuse individuals who look at just the letter and have a hard time understanding the difference between new moon and full moon. Some translations confuse people if they just look at the letter. Pray and seek to discern what the Spirit has to say regarding the matter. Even when it comes to judgment, there are scriptures that say don't judge. There are scriptures that say judge. We must begin to look at the life, at the Spirit of Yahuah, to make known what is meant by the things that we read in the letter. It is important to discover it is the Spirit of Yahuah that comes in Yahusha's name that proves the need to depend on the set-apart Spirit to make the letter alive. And the set-apart Spirit is indeed the Spirit of Yahuah. And you hear me say he comes in Yahusha's name. Go to John 14:26. It bears witness to my words. Come with me, my brothers and sisters, as we press on. Let me also present Hebrews 10th chapter, verse 15 through 17. Hebrews 10th chapter, verse 15 through 17 said, "And the set-apart Spirit also witnesses to us. For after having said before, this is the covenant that I shall make with them after those days, says Yahuwah, giving my laws into their hearts, and in their minds I shall write them. And the sins and their lawlessness I shall remember no more." Believe it or not, my brothers and sisters, some people don't understand that in the text that we have, there are scriptures that talks about the heart being deceitfully wicked. And then we have here where we see Yahuwah writes his laws in our hearts. The heart that's deceitfully wicked is the brain. It's that cognitive factor. It's that muscle in our head, so to speak, that can be programmed to read things differently, to comprehend things differently, to act differently towards situations, to experience different emotions, different methods for interpreting scriptures. That brain, that heart, that's what's deceitfully wicked. And the connection is the scripture that says that the flesh war against the spirit. The brain is flesh. But we have an inward man, and if you search out the scriptures, my brothers and sisters, you will see it speaks of an inward man, our spirit. That is what lives forever. That is what experiences everlasting life. And so this heart, when he say he writes into it, our spirit is joined with Yahuah by Yahusha, by his word. And see, that's why I say, and in their minds, that's the brain. He said, I shall write them. But the heart, that inward man, will manage the brain, will manage our actions, and bring about understanding and wisdom. It's saying their sins and their lawlessness I shall remember no more. Why? Because the word of Yahuah represents the sacrifice, the shed blood, the atoning blood of the word of Yahuah. This is how we can find ourselves made anew, my brothers and sisters. Now take a moment. Reflect on a previous experience. Have you ever had someone bombard you with scriptures to the point it was uncomfortable? Remember, I presented how the word is often compared to water. Irritating moisture can also be a reflection of being bombarded with too many words. Yahusha, oh Yahusha. If we can see how being responsive to the needs of an infant as it relates to irritating moisture, we just might develop keen senses that will take us, that we take with us as we grow to be around one another and witness a set-apart nation enlarge. My brothers and sisters, you may have said, I got this. I guarantee you, meet someone who listened to this message from beginning to end. Challenge someone to listen to this message. Then have a conversation. Ask them, did they listen to the whole message? And compare what was learned by the person that's speaking, that listened to it from beginning to end, to the person that did not. Compare notes to what was learned, what was gained, how it made a difference or can make a difference in growing in set-apartness. See the comparisons and discover how wisdom has been with us in many stages of our lives. The lessons will prove to be useful as a sense of urgency rise up in these final days. Yahusha, oh Yahusha. Giving too many directions at once could cause one to become overwhelmed and shut down even. Learning how to proceed with discipline can provide a more sensible and set-apart flow as we find ourselves gathering together. Remember, some have an appointment to be among the 144,000 in great multitude mentioned in Revelation 7 chapter. Go visit that chapter, my brothers and sisters. Ask yourself, what does it resemble? What will that look like? What is expected of us? Answer this question, my patient brother and sister. Do you want to be distracted by someone who is experiencing irritating moisture? When time comes to move, when time comes to do the things that require our attention in order to successfully meet deadlines, do you think if we fail to manage the diapers of those least among us, that if they're screaming and hollering, do you think that would be a distraction, a disruption? So you see, if we pay attention to the least, if we're sensitive to the nursing mother, and we don't manage our experience with her and around her or them, and if we start murmuring and backbiting and talking about the nursing mother, she need to do something about that and not be sensitive as Yahusha began to come together, then we ignore those who have specific experience that need to be dealt with in a way that does not make them feel bad, depressed, or sad. Irritating moisture, my brothers and sisters. I pray, though these lessons may seem too repetitive, they will prove to be useful to some. There is so much work ahead of us that if we learn how Almighty Yahuah has prepared us these days and is preparing us, the work will not be too overwhelming, my brothers and sisters, too overbearing. I tried to put in these slides words to help me flow through the message. And I will stumble and fall, and I may not even read it exactly word for word, but the message is the same. Your patience is appreciated. My brothers and sisters, as I gradually come to an end, I want to encourage each of us, again, to have that discussion with mothers regarding irritating moisture. Observe their reaction and listen carefully to their words. They may be pleasantly surprised that you're even interested in the challenges that they're facing, that you're even interested in the work that they do to keep the baby dry and fed and clean. They'll be pleasantly surprised that you, as the man, even care, or you, as a sister that may not have went through that experience, even care about them. You see, in this set-apart life, it is important for us to know all the things that the Almighty Father presents before us so that we can grow and learn how they relate to growing in wisdom and maturity. Pray and watch, O Yahusha. Try it. Try discussing these matters. This subject right here, try discussing it and see what a difference it will make. Pray and seek to discern and understand how there is wisdom in recognizing the need to manage irritating moisture. Yahusha, for those of you who've listened to this from beginning to end, I salute you, I thank you, and I say there's so much work to be done, there's so much to learn. Sometimes the things that the Almighty Father has presented before us in life, if we don't take them for granted, if we look and say, what can I learn from that? And how can I apply it to my life or share it with others to apply it to their life? We'll discover that the weights that we carry will be removed when we understand them and manage them in a set-apart way. Thank you for listening, my brothers and sisters. Stay tuned. There's more to come. For in the work that is ahead for the living, physical, set-apart family of Yahusha, for the work that is ahead, there's much to learn, much to do. And soon and very soon, it will all make sense. On that note, I pray that each of us grow to discern the voice of the Spirit of Yahuah, which comes in Yahusha's name. As John 14:26 states, and those who know the Spirit of Yahuah as the Ruach HaKodesh, keep in mind that's not a name. Ruach HaKodesh, or Dash, means set apart spirit. There's no Trinity. Yahuah is spirit everywhere at all times. He is the set-apart spirit. And he sent his set-apart spirit in Yahusha's name. And Yahusha represents his word. This is how we're able to communicate. This is why it says no man can come unto the Father except through the Son. For it is the Son, it is his word that speaks to us so that we understand him. And when we speak to him, it is he who makes intercessions for us For he is the word of the Almighty Father Yahuah. He is one with Yahuah. No Trinity. On that note, thank you again. Hold your head up and be encouraged. The Almighty Father knows the intent of each of us. And watch those that recognize the wisdom that he puts before us. My name is Symmanayah, and I end by saying, Shalum. Shalom, my brother, my sister, my family.